Hello and thank you for watching this week's WeatherQuest farming forecast. First off, we're just going to start with a quick look back at the radar estimated rainfall over the past week to 10 days or so. A lot of the time we've had a northerly flow of air bringing showers into northern and eastern facing coastlines. We have also had some areas of more persistent rain run into northwestern parts and around the Irish Sea, parts of northwest England, North Wales as well. So actually some of these areas have seen quite a lot of rain, those purple colours there, showing around 80 to 100 mil, perhaps more in a few spots. Elsewhere, generally southern England and parts of the Midlands has been dry, sheltered a lot of the time from that northerly flow of air and feed of showers. But I think what you can see is down the east coast, we've had quite a lot of showers, particularly across the North York Moors, parts of the Lincolnshire Wolds, even parts of East Anglia into Norfolk and Suffolk as well. I've seen quite a lot of rainfall, some places seeing 20 to 30 mil, other places not quite seeing as much as that. And then similarly down to the west coast of Wales, down into Cornwall, a feed of showers down the North Sea from convergence lines has continued to bring a fair bit of rain for some parts. So it's been quite mixed for many places. Some of the places that saw rain saw quite a lot of persistent rain from the persistent feed of showers, whereas other places saw pretty sunny conditions for a lot of the time. So looking ahead at the forecast for the next few days as to what's in store, this is the setup for Wednesday. We've got a fairly active jet stream to the north. That's bringing quite breezy conditions to Scotland. Quite a few scattered showers around northern Scotland. Further south, broadly, we've got this ridge of high pressure over southern parts of the British Isles. But what you can see, we've got this trailing front draped across southern and central England and Wales. And that's going to bring quite a bit of rain through Wednesday on and off. Not huge amounts in terms of accumulations, but it's going to be quite drizzly on and off through most of the day and quite a generally dull and damp day for the south. You can see by Wednesday evening that's beginning to fade away. Still quite a lot of cloud, a few bits and pieces of drizzle around, but generally it will begin to ease off as you go through Wednesday evening and Wednesday night. Elsewhere, we've got this next front coming into northwestern Scotland, and more notably this next big area of low pressure out to the west, which is going to push through a little bit later in the week and perhaps for some places bring some longer spells of rain. Wednesday as well will be quite mild, still potentially highs of 14 or 15 degrees in the south in a few spots. So for Thursday, it's going to start off pretty cloudy. We've got the remnants of this frontal boundary draped in here somewhere, so a few bits and pieces of drizzle, a few fog patches as well. But generally, as we go through the course of the day, that's going to lift to the north. Actually, it will dry out. There might be a little bit of brightness developing in places as well. And actually then this high pressure centered across Central Europe will come a bit more dominant, ridging across most of the eastern half of the UK. But this area of low pressure pushing in a front, some breezy conditions, some showery rain to Western Ireland. So a generally settled end to the day for Thursday in the east. There might still be quite a lot of cloud around, but like I say, there should be some slightly brighter intervals as well. Now, the big question is for Friday as to what happens with this area of low pressure and how strongly this area of high pressure remains built. So in this scenario, we've got quite a strongly built area of high pressure here. This area of low pressure struggling to push through that and actually ends up running eastwards across the top into Scandinavia and then down into central parts of Europe. And you can see high pressure generally rebuilding and then becoming quite strongly built and dominant into the weekend as that area of low pressure ends up over here in the Baltic Sea. So that's one scenario if that area of high pressure remains strongly built. Another scenario is that this area of low pressure might end up being a little bit further south, combined with that area of high pressure initially being a little bit weaker, and it might actually move eastwards across the UK, bringing some showery rain to some places. So you can see in this next animation, this is a different model, and it's doing just that, pushing that area of low pressure eastwards across, got some showery rain before it then clears to the east through Saturday, and similarly then high pressure builds to leave a generally settled end to the weekend. But the big difference obviously is we get that low pressure come right across the UK and bringing the risk of rain for most places. Saying that, not necessarily a lot of rain in the south, it may only be 1 or 2 millimetres in spots, but there is obviously the risk of some rain there. So one to keep an eye on the forecast, especially for Friday and into Saturday with that area of low pressure. So just to emphasise the uncertainty that we've got around that, this is the Ensemble forecast. So this is the model that's run several times with different parameters and slightly different starting conditions. And so each line is a slightly different outcome. And you can just see the spread for Friday. So this red box here sort of highlighting the end of this week and into the weekend. Good agreement up until Thursday night into Friday, when obviously there's a lot of difference between that area of low pressure. These scenarios on the top here, they're the ones that we showed first, where there's that high pressure remaining strongly built, the low pressure stays away to the north. These ones here, the high pressure is weaker, it allows that area of low pressure to come through, leading to some showery rain. You can see there's a whole host of different outcomes in between, just depending on how far south that area of low pressure comes and how much the high pressure weakens. So basically the point is, the take-home message, there's a lot of uncertainty for Friday in the weekend. But either way, afterwards we do see a rise in pressure for Saturday afternoon, Sunday and into Monday. So something slightly more settled to end the weekend and to end that period. So looking ahead into next week, this is the pressure anomaly for that period. Generally, we've got high pressure out to the west at first. We've got this big trough of low pressure out to the east. So above average rainfall across here. Some slightly dry weather down the western half. But by the end of the week, the big question is, what happens with this area of high pressure? Some models pushing that a little bit further east. That would cut off a northerly flow and actually bring some slightly milder air and generally drier weather for most of the British Isles. Some models take it just nudging that back a little bit further west, and actually as that pushes back west, that would introduce a fairly chilly northerly flow of air across the UK, bringing scattered showers, potentially some wintry showers. We might even get some little areas of low pressure developing and running down the North Sea, bringing a longer spell of rain, particularly to eastern Britain. So there are two main scenarios really for the end of next week, and it all is going to depend on just how far east or west that area of high pressure might shift. And so this just summarises again the same graph that we showed a couple of slides back, but just taking a look at the sort of longer range period from the middle part of next week onwards, and you can see the huge spread in these different models and the different outcomes. Some, as we mentioned, with that high ridging a little bit further east, bringing more ridged conditions, generally more settled weather, a bit drier. Others bringing lower pressure as that high moves away to the west, and we potentially see some little lows develop and run down the North Sea. So a lot of variation, potentially some quite unsettled conditions, some little areas of low pressure, some wetter weather, but on the converse side of that, it could be a little bit more settled for the end of next week. And similarly going forward, that uncertainty in the spread remains generally quite large. One thing is there is a general dropping in pressure, which I think becomes a little bit more apparent in the following week. The main uncertainty, I think, is this period, the end of next week and into the weekend. But generally, if you look at the averages, you can see a slight drop in pressure as you go forward. Now, the uncertainty towards the end of the next week is also going to have a knock-on effect on temperatures. So if that high moves further west and we see a flow of northerly air and some cooler weather, we're generally going to see this cooler push of air from around the 18th or 19th, so the middle to the end of next week onwards. And you can see here a good signal for below average temperature, but this is just one model. Other models are bringing something slightly milder. So again, here's the Ensemble forecast. Those cooler runs of the models that we just looked at there, bringing some cooler temperatures early on around the 17th, 18th. Others, if that high pressure ridges a little bit further eastwards and we get into a more milder westerly, we will see temperatures stay just that bit milder. And there's a big range of temperatures there, even going out into the following week as well. So really a lot of uncertainty at this stage in the forecast for even as far away as next week and then the week after in the general evolution of things. One thing is though, although there's this uncertainty, in the averages you can see that as you go into those following weeks, there is a slow decrease in temperature. Whether it comes sooner and then stays cooler, or whether it stays milder and then drops, that's the big question. But either way, it does look like we might see something more confidently a little bit cooler as we go into this second to last week of November sort of period. So a lot of uncertainty, but there is potentially something cooler on the cards at some point by the end of November. So looking ahead a bit further into that third week of November, generally still got this area of high pressure out to the west. It looks like either way, whether it shifts east or west, it will have drifted a little bit further west by this point, hence the drop in pressure and the drop in temperatures, because this will introduce a continued north or northwesterly flow of air depending on what happens before that. So generally cool across most of Europe. The driest weather will be closer to this area of high pressure where rainfall might be below average, but further east with this unsettled look to things, it might be that rainfall is above average. So looking at the temperatures, you can see a good signal for cooler than normal weather across most of Europe, with the flow generally from a north or northwesterly direction for most places. And into the following week, no huge amount of change. We still have got high pressure out to the west, so generally feeding in a north or northwesterly flow, or air generally from that northerly quadrant coming in across Europe. So still, broadly, it's going to be slightly cooler than average for many places, slightly drier than average you are the closer to this high, as we'll see less areas of low pressure trying to push through that less heavy frontal rain. Further east, though, a bit more unsettled still. Still some above average rainfall, perhaps a little bit dried down with this other area of high pressure. But generally not a huge amount of change in the pattern since the previous week. So to summarise, this week it's generally going to stay mild. We've got some showery rain at times, particularly Wednesday and potentially Friday, although a lot of uncertainty for Friday on the track of that low pressure. As we go into next week, general consensus seems to be that there is going to be a fall in temperature as we perhaps see an introduction of a northerly flow of air, but a lot of uncertainty with the high pressure as to how far west or east it moves. So one to keep an eye on as to how quickly we see that cooler air introduced. So thanks for watching this week's video. As ever, you can keep up to date with our day-to-day forecasts for the UK and East Anglia on our social media, and you can leave any comments below. Thanks for watching.